All right. So basically, what I want you to do is just introduce yourself. You can do that right now.
Sure. My name's Dan Wiatre. I'm a high school basketball coach in New York City. I live in Staten Island, New York, but I work, teach, and coach in Brooklyn, New York at St. Edmund Prep High School.
Okay. And when and where did you get started as a basketball coach?
I've been playing the game since the fifth grade. And when I was in college playing at Adelphi University, one of my younger brothers, I have two younger brothers and a younger sister. My youngest brother was playing CYO basketball at the time, and he was kind of just getting started. And I saw the need for good help, good people to coach the kids, especially at that age. So during my sophomore year at Delphi, while I was playing, I went back and I coached his CYO team. Started out with a sixth grade CYO team, sixth and seventh graders actually. So I started at St. Thomas Aquinas, which was my parish in Flatbush, Brooklyn. I did that for a number of years. And eventually, when I graduated from college, got a job teaching at the neighborhood Catholic high school, St. Edmund Prep. And the opportunity was offered to me to coach the freshman basketball team at the time. So I started from there, gone from there, continued, been coaching now since 1994. So
Okay.
about 26, 27 years. Started CYO, went to freshman high school, did some AAU, left for 2 years to coach in college at John Jay College as an assistant in New York City, came back to become the athletic director at St. Edmund Prep. And for the last 14 years, the boys varsity basketball coach.
Okay. So, you talked about your past. Do you have any like coaching goals like for your program? Do you want your program to, what did you want your program to be like in like 5 years?
Sure. So in New York City, there's different levels of in the Catholic League. The AA is the highest, the A and the B. We're at the A level, and we compete. We're one of the better programs at the A level, so we want to compete as best we can. We're probably never going to be a AA based on school enrollment and things like that, but we want to be the best we can at our level, and I think we do that. And the big thing with us is it's a players program. The kids come back. We're very alumni oriented. A lot of the guys who, whether they were superstars or just role players, they come back and help out and come to the games, and they offer a lot of support. So that's what I see in the next 5 years, continuing to be the best program we can. We have 3 teams, freshman, JV, and varsity. And, we want all of our teams to compete as best they can. We're not a type of program that goes out and is recruiting and giving scholarships. We get a lot of the neighborhood kids. So we take the neighborhood kids from the neighboring parishes, and we develop a lot of these kids. And we do get some really good players, but for the most part, we're getting that neighborhood kid in that family environment. And that's what really attracts them to St. Edmund Prep. And we want to maintain that and continue to grow that in the future.
Yeah, so that's a lot of the same thing with me. So I'm just starting out really. It's like maybe my 6th year. So but it's a lot of what we do is we're developing our young guys to obviously play at the varsity level, but more like developing them as we want them to have integrity when they go out in the real world. And that's a lot of what I do, is make sure that we stay communicating even during this lockdown, and that's something that that's my role as an assistant. And hopefully I can become a head coach in the next few years, but it's not something that's on it can be on the table right now, but it's not on the table as far as I'm going to school still. So it's, and I want to become a teacher. So,
Sure.
so that's kind of where I'm at right now. But that's where my program's we're working things out right now, trying to get a little better. And yeah, that's basically where we're at. And that's how I kind of see our program. Our program's going to be relevant in a few years. hopefully. And so basically, I want to ask you, what is your coaching philosophy? Yeah,
That's a good question, and I'm trying to relate that to what you're saying because we all started there at one point as a young coach. My coaching philosophy, basically, we kind of have what we call our non-negotiables in our program, and the first thing is, you got to be a student athlete. So that's the very first thing. When they come in September, we will meet with them. We'll have 3 separate meetings: one for the 9th graders, one for the 10th graders, and one varsity aged 11. All 3 of our coaches will talk to them. I'll, be in all 3 meetings, obviously, to introduce myself and what our program is about. And first thing we start off is being a student athlete. You're at St. Edmund Prep. It's a Catholic high school. Your parents are paying a lot of money, making a sacrifice for you to come to the school. Easily could have sent you to the local public school and said, good luck. So grades are important. Being respectful, in the hallways. We're a small Catholic school of about 600, and everybody gets to know you quickly. So, even if you're a freshman, if you're messing around in the building behavioral wise, everybody will get to know you in a negative way early on. And it's very tough to redo a first impression. So the student athlete part, the character part is where we start. And then then we get around to talking basketball. I think the basketball part kind of falls into place if the other things are all in order. We talk about, family, we talk about God, and then in school, and then basketball maybe comes like right after that, even though it's probably the most important thing for some of them at that age, or they think it is. And everybody has a goal. Everybody has a goal of, playing in the NBA or playing D1. We say, if you take care of the non-negotiables, the things that we build our program on first, then the basketball will take care of itself.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. It's a lot of, I coach public school, so it's, a lot harder for, the kids to understand that their grades matter. And some of them have good grades and can play. And then other ones have are average and have good grades. And, I keep the people that have good grades, and, are willing to work in the classroom and not causing problems. That's a lot. I look as a coach, that's the biggest thing for me. You want to be able to make sure that they're getting their work done. So basically, what is your plan to improve as a coach year to year?
That's an excellent question. I always try to, every year, just like a player in the off season tries to add something to their game. NBA, they talk about it all the time. The off season, he worked on his body, or he worked on his post skills, or he worked on something. As a coach, I try to have the same approach, to the game. So I watch a ton of video. All of our games are videoed. I've already watched. I probably started earlier than I would have because of the pandemic. This normally would have started in July. But what I'll do is I'll rewatch every game from this season that we just played, and I will break it down and send clips to our returning guys as a way for them to see themselves. And I'll watch it to see what I could have done better. So, sometimes kind of second guess yourself a little bit. Well, what could I have done a little differently in that situation in the future? Pick up some notes. So that's a big thing is video. I watch a lot of the coaches' championship production videos. This year, there was a great resource because of the pandemic. They wound up offering it for free online instead of buying the DVD. So I watched about 36 different coaches and presenters speak already, and I've taken a ton of notes. And a few of the workouts that they during the pandemic I've actually implemented into our Zoom meets that we do right now. So I'm always looking for new drills, that to kind of go hand in hand with our style of play. But at the same time, I'm also looking to get out of my comfort zone. So, we play a certain style. We like to play not super fast, but we play fast. We push the ball. Defensively, we like to pressure. So I've been trying to look for things to, supplement that as well as some counter things, just to have something in my back pocket. Maybe looking at, we haven't played any zone defense in about 8 years, but I've watched a lot of zone video during the pandemic just to see, where I might be able to sneak it in for a possession or two out of a timeout or a change of pace or to protect the player with fouls. So, that's kind of what I do. And then what I'll do also is, I'll bring kids in small groups normally, not yet, obviously, and kind of test case some of these drills out with them, in groups of 3 or 4, especially my leaders, so that when I bring it back to the group, they know what they're doing. They can kind of present it as well as I can, and I can lean on them a little bit. But the biggest thing for me is to improve is just constant video, reading, use technology, things of that nature.
Yeah, there's a lot of free resources out there right now just because we really can't do anything. And, I've kind of watched them, and I've been kind of adding to my my YouTube videos and stuff like that to help people. And then I add my own stuff too. And one of the things that you said is that you like to run zone. Like you were thinking about running zone for like maybe a possession.
Yes.
So, I've been more adept to running zone. But one of the things that worked for us last year, and it threw everyone off, was a 1-1-3, which is a basic 2-3. So it threw everyone off, and the coaches were looking at us like, "What are you running?" But it throws everyone off, and then they're the coach eventually figures it out, but then we switch to something else.
Sure.
So that's kind of a different look that we gave last year that I was like, oh, that's interesting. Never really heard of the 1-3-1 or 1-3 or 1-1-3 before that. It was kind of like, okay, that's interesting. I like it.
Yep.
Okay. And then, so as far as tryouts, what do you look for in a tryout?
Yeah, so we're basically an 11-month-a-year type of program. And what I mean by that is the season ends around March 1st. I'll give them 5 weeks off, and then we go right back in April, starting with the next group. So then I tell them every opportunity during the off season is kind of part of the tryout. When November rolls around, we're allowed to do stuff in the off season in New York. But when November rolls around, I think this coming year it's November 7th and 8th are tryouts officially. A lot of the decisions are made. There's not too many surprises at that point. What do I look for? I look for kids who are reliable. I look for kids who can communicate properly. I look for kids who can follow instructions. Every once in a while, you'll get a kid, because the off season, like I said, I go from April through November, at least 3 or 4 days a week. The games that we do in the off season are really a reward. So I'll have 25 kids in the gym, in April and May, open gym and weight room and stuff like that. But I obviously won't bring 25 if I put them in a little tournament. I'll bring 10 maybe or 12. And I'll rotate that. But it's kind of a reward. It's a carrot for them working hard, showing up. And really what I need is we're a good team when we have our best guys showing up, putting in the work, and being leaders. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for guys to step up. And what I tell them all the time is, you don't have to be the best player to follow directions and do the right things. So I've had guys make the team. Maybe there's another kid in the school who says, I'm nicer than him. I got a better dribble. I can jump higher. He's on the team, but I'm not. How come? Maybe it's because coach likes him. No, it's because coach, has appreciated his work ethic leading up to the process. Maybe you think you are a better talent or player, but there's warning signs that there's going to be issues, and you might not be happy fulfilling whatever your role is going to be on the team. And that'll happen. And it breaks your heart as a coach because you want all the kids to buy in, and do the right thing. But 2 years ago, for example, we really could have we had 2 really good guards. They're just graduating right now in June 2020. When they were 10th graders, they started for me 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Very good players. But we really didn't have a good, solid backup for them. I had a senior on that team who was a transfer student. He had transferred in. He didn't try out as a junior. He came in from a public school, but he kind of wanted to be part of it. So his senior year, he comes out, he did some of the workouts. he could play a little bit, but I didn't put him on the team. And I told him, I says, basically, I'm doing this for both of us. One, I don't think you'd be happy in the role that I can give you, and two, the bottom line is this: you're kind of late to the party. I've got other guys here who have gone through the process for 3 or 4 years, freshman, JV, and you might be a little more talented than them, but overall, when you weigh the pluses and the minuses, it didn't add up for him. And I had to explain that to him, and that's a tough conversation to have, with kids. This year, ideally I'd like to keep 12. This year I wound up keeping the most we've ever had. I kept 16, and I had 10 seniors, and a couple of them, they understood their role. And I said to them, you're going to be the 14th, 15th, or 16th guy. There's going to be a lot of days where you don't even participate much in practice during the season. After we do our initial warm-ups, you're going to have to be a guy who's a scout team guy, or honestly, just somebody who's, kind of hanging out on the side. But at the same time, you're going to be held accountable. If you can deal with that, you can have a uniform. But don't ever complain about, because I'm telling you up front. So my biggest thing with them is honesty. I don't tell 16 guys they're going to start, or be the man. We had, like I said, we had 2 really good senior guards. One of them was second team All-State this year, and he played about 30 minutes a game for 4 years. So there wasn't a lot of backup time available. But what it was this year, we had a really good squad, and we had a very live bench. Those guys were into the game. They bought into their roles. They pumping their teammates up. They were cheering, and they understood that if we did have a lot of lopsided victories, they would get into some games. So they were they weren't pouting on the bench. And that's what I look for. Guys that are going to buy in, be good soldiers. And if I do call on them, they're not going to hurt us on the court.
Those are, the head coach that I'm working for right now, he calls them the 20-20 guys. So if we're up 20 or down 20, they're going to get in. Mm-hmm. So basically, there's I know you've talked about it, communication with your players. Do you communicate with your parents, and how do you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I just want to say that, I'm blessed, and I have 2 parents that have been involved, but not overly involved since we started playing. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I played at Adelphi, which is Division II here in New York. My 2 brothers played Division I basketball. Sister, she was as good of an athlete as us. She went to school for academics, but they were involved all the time. They were the type that would help out with rides, but a lot of these kids don't have that. They don't have 2 parents involved. They don't have support at the games. So, but I do communicate with them. We have an opening parent meeting every year, right after the tryouts. That first week after tryouts, and I tell them, I says, you have to be represented by a parent or guardian, because we're going to talk about everything important and relevant to the season. And I even have a penalty involved. The penalty is you're not going to play in the first scrimmage game, in the season. If you're not represented by a parent or guardian, you're not getting in. I don't care if you're the number 1 guy or the number 12 guy. So, and believe it or not, I have a darn near 100% attendance every year. And at that meeting, we exchange numbers, we exchange emails. Most of the parents we are a Catholic school. Most of them do come to off-season things, but some of them, to be honest with you, this is the only time I might get to see them all year until senior night, at the end of the season. So I want to make sure that I take little notes on each situation. How is it? I'll ask them, how is it best for me to reach you? And I will give out my cell phone and my email. Some of them, it's best to reach them, Monday afternoons at 3:00 is the best time to get them. If you need, because we always inevitably we do need things from them. Yeah. We need to keep them informed. For a lot of them, their kids spend more time with us than they do with them, because they're working all the time. So part of it is just the trust factor, that they know who their child is around, for all those hours a day. Who's the crazy guy who's having practice every day of the week, including on weekends and holidays. So for that part, and I'll give them an opportunity also in the right setting to ask any questions that they may have. And sometimes the questions are fairly obvious, but sometimes they're, out in a little bit like left field, but it's important that those questions are asked and answered so that we all can communicate on the same level.
Yeah. All right. So we'd already talked about that. Okay. So you talked about. So what offense do you run generally?
Yeah, generally, we've had, this, it's not college, obviously, so I don't get to recruit to my system.
Yeah.
I have to tweak, the system a little bit. I think my first couple of years back with the program, we were more of an inside-oriented team. We had a bunch of kids who in our league, were big. They were 6'3" to 6'5", which in our league is pretty good.
Yeah.
Then we went through a process there where we went from playing 3 out, 2 in. We just ran out of size. We ran out of big kids. We ran out of kids who had the talent to play inside, and we were more guard oriented. And we've kind of stuck with that for about the last 8 years, where we'll either play 4 out, or a lot of times we'll play 5 out. We like to run a secondary break off all makes and misses. To run our lanes, and then we'll call a set after if we don't have anything, we'll back out. We'll call a set. This past season, I had a very experienced team, so I was able to give them a little more freedom and let them go. I would tell my 2 veteran guards, I don't want you to you don't have to call a play unless the other team scores the ball. So if you can get it off a transition, if you can get it off of a rebound, if you can get it off of a turnover, you guys can push the ball, play within the concepts that we work on, screening, dribble handoffs, all these different things, reversing the ball side to side, all the fundamentals. I won't call the play, unless the other team scores. The other team scoring the ball and we're getting it out of the net, you're going to hear me every time calling out a number, and we number our sets. By the end of the year, I think we had 15 different sets that we ran. So, you'll hit, 1, 6, 5, whatever they are. And if you don't want to hear numbers all game long, we got to do it. Our philosophy is to do it off of the defense. So that's kind of how we've played with a smaller lineup the last couple of years.
Okay. So do you guys like to press, or are you what kind of press do you guys run?
Yeah, we're a man-to-man full court team.
Okay.
We really rely on our quickness. We have a very small gym, a smaller size court. We rely on pushing teams into what we call the trapping areas or the bad spots in the floor, corners, the sideline, one step over half court. So we do like to press full court man-to-man. We will trap certain players. We will not trap every player. I've watched a lot of the video that I have watched during the UF season. It's been good because it's given me a perspective. One of the videos that I watched from one of the college coaches in our area, Tobin Anderson, over at Stack, they're a very successful Division II program. His philosophy is slightly different than mine. They press man to man, but they look to more trap bad players. I like to trap both what I would call good players or guards. Their philosophy, which is successful for them. They'll trap if a big guy has the ball. They figure that's a good opportunity at that level because the bigs are very different than the guards in college. So about a 6'8" guy versus a 6'1" guy. At our level, everybody's kind of the same size.
Yeah.
So it's a little different, but it gave me a good perspective, and I am going to implement some of that into our style. I plan to next year. So we really like to trap. We'll run and jump. That's our big thing. We'll run and jump on certain players.
That's one thing that I'm like, I don't know if I could teach that. And that's probably that leads into the next question. What is the hardest thing for you to teach?
That's an excellent question. And again, it depends on the group. So if it's a freshman group, because that's where I started out in high school 24 years ago.
Yeah.
The first thing that we want to teach them is every fundamental. I was in a college Zoom meeting with college coaches the other night at Zoom, and they still say that they're recruiting kids. They're looking for guys who can dribble, pass, and shoot. So those fundamentals are not out the window, even though kids are shooting side steps and step backs. So as a freshman coach, I really focused on the fundamental concept of doing things the right way. Jump stops, 2 hands on the ball. And I still find myself, because that's my origins as a CYO freshman coach originally, I still find myself working on those concepts with the varsity guys every day. Jump stop, 2 hands, using the backboard on a layup, using the proper hand. So those are really things that I try to emphasize with them. The toughest teaching parts are on defensive rotations and defensive communications. understanding when. A lot of times, if you have a really good player, he'll try to cover for other people.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is he might see the next rotation and he'll take somebody else's turn and take that rotation, and now we're all out of whack. And I don't, I'll tell my guy, you're doing us a disservice. I know you know what you're doing, but you have to communicate to the man in the middle that he's got to bump over. You've got to bump his spot. He's got to bump, rather than you bumping two spots, picking up a foul because you're late. You're late because it's an impossible rotation. So defensive rotations and communication are things that we constantly will go over. And it's a big issue as a kid comes up from like the freshman or the JV team to really understand those things. And not only that, because in a varsity game, in our level, at our school, there's a bigger crowd. So you have to be louder. You're not playing in front of 25 people at a freshman game. In a freshman game, you are. In a varsity game in our place, you might have, 300 or 400 people there, at the game. And it's very tough to hear if you say, go, Jim. You got to scream it at the top of your lungs so the people outside in the street can hear you. So the rotations and communication at the varsity level for me.
Okay. So, what do you like to work on in your practices?
Yeah, my practices are very regimented on my computer at the school. I've got every practice that I've ever had, at the school. It's either, the early ones as a freshman coach are in, spiral notebooks. But for the last 14 seasons, everything's on the computer, date, time, theme for the day, everything down to the second, including breaks and all that. What we work on every day is, we'll start out, I want to get them loose. I don't want any injuries. So we'll get into some sort of warm up, dynamic warm up. And I don't shortcut on that. Even if our practice time is cut a little bit for some reason for that day, we're going to spend our 5 to 10 minutes in our regular dynamic warm up. After that, we'll get into some drills with the ball, whether it's some layup drills, some ball handling drills, some shooting drills. So everybody gets a feel for the basketball. So now you're about 15, 20 minutes deep. And then we will get into whatever the emphasis or the theme is for the day. It could be press offense today because we're playing a pressing team next. It could be running our, better execution of our half-court sets. So these are the things that on a daily basis we'll go over. And like I said, I have that middle space of the practice where it does change. And then at the end of the practice, it's always kind of similar. We'll do our cool down drills. We'll do some more stuff with the ball. And, we'll do some more, maybe a little scrimmaging depending on the day.
Yeah.
I don't scrimmage every day. I do want to let them scrimmage a little more going forward. We do a lot of 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 scrimmaging during practice. We don't do a lot of 5-on-5. As I said, it's a small court. I also think in 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 scrimmaging, everybody's a little more accountable and does have to communicate and rotate properly. 5-on-5, sometimes guys can get hidden, or buried, and you'll never know they're there, and you don't know what mistakes they're making. The 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 is also kind of how we play. We do try to shrink the court on defense, so we have teams in a situation where 2 or 3 of their players are not involved. So and they start to understand, guys, the practices are just like the game, except the practices are probably a little more intense and you'll hear me. The game should be easier. The game should be fun based on the practices.
Yeah. So, that's as we have progressed in the last year. We don't have a gym right now, so like they're building our new gym, I guess, but it's actually going ahead of schedule now just because of the pandemic. But it was supposed to be 2 years, and we had to drive our kids to practice. So I'd be late to practice sometimes because I'd have to drive. So, and take like 3 trips to the place. But basically,
sorry about that.
No, you're good. So that kind of gets into what I was going to talk about. So me, the freshman coach, the JV coach, would always.
Could you hold on 1 second? I'll be right. Sorry, I apologize for that.
No, you're good. Don't worry about it. So basically, we would play our scrimmage our freshman team. So like our JV team would scrimmage our freshman team. And at the end of the year, our freshmen got better just because they were playing us a lot. And, they actually, beat us, which I was I was so mad. Like,
Yeah.
you should never let your freshman team beat your JV team. But also the year before that, we had beat our varsity team. And that just kind of was like, proof that we're getting a little better throughout the year. And they eventually brought up the person that was on JV to varsity that year. So that was a good sign of, okay, like on JV, we're improving. So this is helping our varsity. And yeah, so that's kind of where, like, we have, we're in this place where it's 4 courts and we have 3 of them. So we'll put, and we'll just scrimmage sometimes because we have the same time practice. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what we did. And I felt it really helped a lot to see that as a coach, see that, like, okay, they're developing, they're seeing stuff now. When it first started, I was like, oof, this is looking a little ugly for the freshmen, and, whatever. But at the end, the freshmen were getting pretty good at it. So I was like, okay, that's good. And we were getting pretty good at it too. So, all right. So, any favorite books or movies that you like as a basketball coach?
I actually, have a stack of books, that I read. I always try to read during the summer, at least 2 or 3 basketball books. And I'm kind of biased to whatever I'm reading at the moment because that's fresh in my mind. But anything with any John Wooden book, where it talks about the fundamentals, any leadership book. I think those books by, anything in the Mike Krzyzewski series, Coach K, Rick Pitino has a lot of good stuff out there. Those types of books. I always try to read about those types of coaches, but not only them, but sometimes coaches and leaders from other sports. So if you have something from maybe the world of baseball or football, a great coach from there. Joe Torre, for example. Joe Torre was the manager for the Yankees for years, very successful, but he struggled as a manager in other places in the beginning of his career. And he talked a lot in his book about, managing players versus coaching players, having young versus old. So I think those are good things. I'm not really into anything book-wise at this point in my life, unless it is sport related, so I'm really, even articles, the Jay Billis book on toughness. It started out as an article on ESPN, and then he turned it into a book with a ton of interviews from different coaches around the country. Coach K, Tom Izzo, coaches like that. I think that the Billis book on toughness is probably my favorite. I will assign the kids, I'll photocopy a chapter or 2, and I will assign for them to read it in the preseason, and they'll have to report on it. So maybe I'll give them a 15-page chapter to read this week. And by the end of the week, they have to discuss it. One of the chapters defines the terms, toughness, terms like cutting hard, setting a screen. What does it mean? Give an example. And I want them to understand it's important to not only run hard when you're going to get the ball, but you're showing toughness. If you run your lane full speed and I come down and I give you a little fake and the defense has to shift to you because you ran hard, and now I have the trailer wide open for a dunk or a layup, that's your basket as the person who ran hard. You're sacrificing for the team. So the Billis book really breaks it down. It's a couple 100 pages, but it's not a tough read. And again, it all was born from an article that he did on ESPN years ago. So first thing I did about 8 years ago is I just took the article off ESPN, and the kids really seemed to like it. So then I said, you know what? I'm going to give them more in the following groups, and I'm going to give them more from the book. So we went that route. So really my favorite, a lot of sports movies I love, and I feel I'm one of those guys as a, as a coach, I feel I can take away something from anything,
Yeah.
so if I watch any sort of movie, even if it's not considered a great critically acclaimed movie, there's probably something in it that I could take and bring back to my team. I love the movie, old school movie Hoosiers, and that
Yeah.
was good. Obviously, it doesn't apply necessarily. You're not going to come down. I'm not going to make my team throw 5 passes, and not practice with the ball. But there's a lot of things in there. Just the thing about, this is what we have. This is what we're working with. It's a small gym. It's an undersized team. It's not a deep bench. These are the things, like you mentioned, practicing, sharing practices. At our school, we have one small gym. We have 5 teams,
Yeah.
3 boys teams, 2 girls teams. Everybody splits the gym every day for practice unless teams have an away game. So my freshmen and JV could be splitting the practice, half court, half court. I'll try to get the coaches to do some drills together and then separate into your thing, and then maybe come back at the end, even if it's a half court scrimmage where you're working on your sets. There are some days as the varsity boys team where I'm splitting the gym with the girls JV team. And those are really interesting days because I'm constantly, my whistle's going during practice, and it's like a culture shock for the girls. So it's also teaching our guys to be focused on me and not focused on what's going on down there on the other end of the floor, because we're using different terminology. But so any of those books right now, what we're doing is we're going 2 days a week. We have a workout later today with our upcoming varsity group and our JV group. We've now split it in 2. We started out together. No problem.
All right.
We started out working out together, but now we're split. My JV coach has the Rising JV. I've got the Rising Varsity, and we're doing the Phil Beckner. He's an NBA trainer. He was one of the producers in the coach. We're doing his workout. For the first 45 minutes, his ball handling, his weak hand ball handling, and his footwork drills. So these are all things that I enjoy. Anything sports related, to me is interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff that I've learned or is coming from like John Wooden's books or
Sure.
YouTube videos that I watch. Clinics, free clinics, lots of them right now. So that's kind of where I'm going to end the interview. But did you have any questions for me?
I saw your post on Underdog Hoops. That's what it really attracted me to the site was that, you had the thing about the toughness and you had the breakdowns. And I think if you can communicate that to your kids, that you're coaching, your 9th, 10th, 11th graders, whatever grades, I think you will reach your goals and you will move up, to the next level when that opportunity presents itself, whether it's at a high school or a college or whatever, at a public or a Catholic. I know every state is different. The biggest thing that advice that I would try to give a younger coach starting out is just enjoy what you do. If it ever feels like a job, then you're doing the wrong thing. I'm constantly looking for ways to get better. Like I've been doing this more than half my life. And that's the big thing. If you can take something away, no matter what it is, I tell the kids when I run basketball clinics and camps, I don't care if you just learn one thing a day for this 4-day camp. You learn one thing a day, which is the minimum. You got 4 new things, that you can bring back, put in your bag so you can use this season. And that's the biggest thing. As long as you have that hunger, that desire to keep improving, I think sky's the limit.
Yeah. And I appreciate you taking your time out of your day and interviewing. And I'll email you after and kind of give you the I have a few books that I made, or like their stat sheets or stuff like that. Practice plan. Probably don't need that because you're doing it on your computer. But I do take stats during the game, so I made like a little stat book.
What's your key stat that you emphasize, Coach?
So I emphasize offensive rebounds. So offensive rebounds by the other team and how many they convert.
Okay.
So that's seeing them as, okay, they are scoring like 17 points off our, 17 rebounds or whatever, off of their second chance opportunities, that kind of stuff. So I count, they get their second chance opportunity, they get another one, and then if they get a 3 off that, then I count that as, okay, they scored 3 points on that possession.
Sure.
So that's kind of what and that's helped me explain to them, like, okay, this is our issue. You're allowing too many offensive rebounds, allowing, them to have more opportunities to score, and we need to box out better. And we're a small team, so, boxing out is very big.
Very good. I think that's great. Any way where you can find to do stuff like that. So the next thing I guess would be, once they understand that concept is, and different coaches are different. You'll have guys like Tom Izzo and Chris Mack at Louisville. They'll spend 20 minutes a day on rebounding in different drills. And then you'll have different guys who say, you know what, it's an issue. We talked about it. I showed it to them on video. Now it's up to them to hold each other accountable. Whether it's, push-ups during practice for giving up an offensive rebound, or laps after practice, or whatever it is. Like you said, maybe some sort of point system where even in practice, so if it starts in practice, we could minimize the damage in the game. Yeah. And now all those close losses now turn into close.
Yeah, and that's what it turned out to be at the end. So it was like, okay, like we're actually fixing this problem that we had in the summer. And I started taking it in the summer because I was like, okay, I'm going to make a separate thing at the bottom of my stats, and we'll keep track of that, because they didn't understand until I was like, guys, you guys are allowing so many points off your offensive rebounds that it's hurting you guys in the end, putting you guys further in a hole. And they realized that at the end of the year, that I was trying to drill that into them. So that's one of the biggest things that I've kept track of over the last maybe 2 years.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
No?
I was going to say, I think on my end of it, we really focus, the stat was on defensive stops. We try to string together 3 consecutive stops, and then fouling. We really want to try to minimize fouling. A Rick Pitino quote from one of his books, right, is fouling negates hustle. So if you're running around trapping, and then all of a sudden you got somebody falling out of bounds and you give them a hip check, that foul right there, even if it's not a bonus situation, it negates the hustle or the good trap, and it gives the other team a reset on the clock and a fresh opportunity. So those are really the 2 stats that I focus on, would be consecutive stops in a row. And if those build up during the course of a game, obviously that's good for us, and fouling. And if we can minimize those 2, minimize fouling and maximize consecutive stops, we're usually in pretty good shape at the end of the game.
Yeah, I'm okay with fouling as long as it's not like 90 feet away from, the basket.
Yeah, it's part of the game. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's the reach-ins and
it's the reach-ins from all the way at the other side of the court, and you're like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you have any other questions or anything?
No, I think I'm good. I appreciate the time, and hopefully, it was beneficial. And I'm going to keep following you guys, so keep working.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to sign out.
All right.